Infiltrate secure locations across the globe in this stealth action thriller. Uncover a global conspiracy and stop a deadly bioterror attack in the second game of the award-winning Splinter Cell series. Welcome to episode 56 of the 5 T's of Stealth, where we will be discussing Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Pandora tomorrow. Once again, the 5 T's include tasks, terrain, tools, threats, and tension. These are what I consider to be the fundamentals of stealth gaming. First things first, I played on normal difficulty. The next thing I want to mention is the order of the Splinter Cell franchise. A few months back, I played through all the available Splinter Cell games on Steam. In October 2025, Ubisoft added the 2 missing games, Pandora Tomorrow and Conviction, to Steam. I quickly purchased them both so that I could finish the franchise. However, this means the order in which I played the games is a little wonky. There are 6 Splinter Cell games and I played them in the following order: 1, 3, 4, 6, 2, 5. This isn't exactly ideal, but again, I'm happy to say I've now completed the franchise. That's spoilers for the next review, which is of course Splinter Cell Conviction, and I'll probably give this same speech again. Anyway, let's jump in. Pandora Tomorrow very much follows the pattern of the other Splinter Cell games, especially the other 2 games in the original trilogy, Splinter Cell and Chaos Theory. You play as Sam Fisher, and you have to stop some sort of terrorist organization that is trying to kill a ton of people. In this title, you are chasing down an Indonesian group who is trying to cause a smallpox outbreak. Honestly, that's all I really want to say about the story. There's definitely more to it, but it isn't exactly groundbreaking. It's just more of the spy thriller, save the world type thing. Now, it may sound like I'm belittling the story a bit by not really going into it, but that isn't my intention. The story will keep you engaged for sure, it just isn't going to be the main reason you want to play this game or any Splinter Cell game for that matter. The mission design, on the other hand, wow. Let's talk. The first thing that really stuck out to me was when I was told to stay in the light. What in the hell? Since when do stealth games tell you to stay in the light? Well, there was an enemy with night vision goggles making the automated searchlight a blind spot in a safe zone for you. This is a brief moment, but really incredible in my opinion. A lot of the game does follow what you would expect. You must infiltrate a certain location to gain information, save hostages, or even take a hostage of your own. Let's talk about that last part. In one of the later missions, you must sneak into a TV station where the main antagonist is recording a message to broadcast to the world. During the recording, in a room full of patrolling guards, you have to sneak through the room and grab this man. Once you grab him, all the men in the room pull their guns on you, but none of them shoot as you just slowly walk away with them all slowly following after you. There's another mission where you're trailing a woman through the streets and have to somehow stay out of sight at all times. Seriously, you're basically just walking down one path, praying for a little corner to cry in or a ledge to climb up. The final mission, however, is by far my favorite. I cannot believe how impactful it was for me. In the final mission, you're tracking down the remnants of the main antagonist's group who have one final smallpox explosion and are planning to release it in LAX. We'll talk about how cool it is to move through LAX in a minute, but your actual objective is the insane part. Naturally, you have to track down the last members of the group and find the smallpox bomb, but it's before that that really steals my heart. Throughout the airport, there are several terrorists who are disguised as airport employees, and you have to eliminate them all. However, they are mixed in with actual civilians who you of course cannot kill. In order to find out who to take down, you have to use thermal vision, since the terrorists have recently taken a smallpox vaccine which impacts their internal temperature. So now you're basically scanning everyone you come across to find out whether or not you need to put them down. Ultimately, again, the story is fine and will keep you engaged enough, but I've never really played Splinter Cell for the story. The mission design, however, feels great, which is definitely in line with the rest of at least the original trilogy. In typical Splinter Cell fashion, there are a ton of options for moving around the environment and several crazy locations for you to infiltrate. Starting with your options, you can open doors and windows, flip light switches, climb through elevator shafts, climb up pipes, fences, and ladders, use zip lines, rappel from rooftops, sneak through vents, squeeze through narrow passages, split jump up close walls, and more. Some levels will even mix things up by having a keypad or a retinal scanner requiring you to take an extra step to move forward. It just always feels like you've got several different options in any given scenario, and things are always staying fresh. In terms of the actual locations, again, things are crazy. You will infiltrate a US embassy, a cryogenics lab, a train, the streets of Jerusalem, an outpost in Indonesia, a submarine and its docking station, a TV station, and finally, LAX. Let's start with the train missions since those always hold a special place in my heart. In Splinter Cell Blacklist, the train mission was pretty bad and frustrating, so I was a bit worried. However, I loved it here in Pandora Tomorrow. You start on top of the train and have to slowly make your way through it. You'll proceed by climbing underneath or on the side of the train cars, and every second felt great. It was quite the spectacle. Let's talk the submarine. The submarine itself was decent, but the real highlight for me was the docking station. You have to activate this lift, which carries you across the docking station, while there are enemies all around waiting for a chance to shoot at you. Lastly, let's talk LAX a bit more. You start by sneaking onto a truck which carries you into the airport. Once inside, you have to move through all these internal areas, including the conveyor belts carrying the luggage, as well as offices overlooking the terminals. Towards the end, you even have to scale the elevator shafts to make your way to the walkways above, where the last of the enemies and the bomb are located. I should also mention the existence of the first aid rooms. I'm not sure if there is one available on every level, but you will occasionally come across a room with a medkit which you can of course use to heal. Much like the other two games in the original trilogy, Pandora Tomorrow gives you so many options in each area, even if at times it feels like there's one best option. On top of that, the locations remain an absolute highlight with airports, trains, labs, and more. Honestly, I'm surprised by how much I missed controlling my character's speed with the mouse wheel. Of course, that means it makes a return in Pandora Tomorrow, which should come as no surprise. There's 4 or 5 different speeds that you can choose from, with the slower speeds being the quietest. This goes for crouching as well, which will make you even harder to spot. Along with your sprint and crouch, there is the option to dodge roll. You can also take cover against walls with the option to move from cover to cover available as well. Night vision and thermal vision make a return and are of course a staple of the franchise. Another staple, at least of the original trilogy, is the light meter. The light meter will fluctuate based on how visible you currently are at every moment. Something else that I always love in these games is the interrogation mechanic. There isn't really a stealth takedown, but you can walk up behind an enemy and grab them. Some enemies, when grabbed, can be interrogated for some information, and you usually end up with a pretty solid Sam Fisher one-liner. As per the usual, once killed or knocked out, bodies can be moved. Sam still has quite the set of acrobatic skills, allowing him to climb on many environmental objects, which we discussed earlier, as well as shimmy across ledges and vault up low walls. You can climb pipes vertically or horizontally, with the horizontal option always feeling much cooler, especially when you factor in the ability to put your feet up, making you even harder to spot. You can even pull out your pistol. The split jump is still around as mentioned earlier, which allows you to jump up between 2 close walls. You can whistle, use binoculars, lockpicks, pick up and throw objects in the environment such as bottles, peek under doors with the optic cable, and very rarely you'll have an opportunity for the laser mic which lets you hear from afar. I think that's all the basics, so let's talk weapons. The horrible shooting returns with access to a silenced pistol and the SC-20K, which is your super fancy spy rifle. The pistol is simple enough, but you can toggle a red dot which actually shows where your bullets will go. This was a huge win in my book since the random bloom can be very frustrating, and watching the laser can solve that problem. The SC-20K can be toggled between semi-automatic and fully automatic, but also lets you aim with a scope and hold your breath to fully control your shots. Needless to say, the rifle was typically the way to go. However, the more exciting part of the rifle is all the fancy ammunition it comes with. These ammo types include sticky camera, smoke grenade, ring airfoil rounds, sticky shocker, and the diversion camera. Sticky cameras are pretty simple and allow you to control them to see inside of a room. Smoke grenades will of course block line of sight, allowing you to sneak through, but depending on how much smoke your target inhales, they can be knocked out. The ring airfoil rounds and sticky shocker are both non-lethal takedown options, with the sticky shocker being more effective. Lastly, the diversion camera, which is basically a sticky cam on steroids. The diversion cam still allows you to look around, but now you can also whistle to bait guards, then release some knockout gas. Aside from the guns, there are still several other gadgets available. This includes the frag grenade, flash grenade, disposable picks, camera jammer, chaff grenade, and wall mines. Most, if not all of these are pretty self-explanatory in my opinion. Frags and mines go boom, flash grenades blind, disposable picks make for quick lock picking, the camera jammer temporarily jams cameras, And lastly, the chaff grenade, which acts like an EMP and temporarily disables electronics. When it comes to these gadgets and the ammo types, I could definitely be missing some, so let me know if I did. Your basic enemies in this game are soldiers or terrorists or whatever else you want to call them. Detection is pretty damn crazy most of the time, with enemies just barely seeing you or hearing you and ruining everything. I must admit, this does feel pretty random or inconsistent at times, but I mostly chalk that up to some old school jank. Some of these enemies will have night vision goggles, some will have snipers, and many of them will have flashlights. There are also many civilians or, for lack of a better word, good guys. In other words, many of the people you avoid throughout this game are completely innocent, meaning you can't really harm them. Regardless of who you are avoiding, it usually feels pretty similar, and again, you gotta be very careful or you'll constantly be detected. Some missions will end if you are detected, while others will have some more leeway. Aside from the basics, what else should you fear? Well, I think there were literally only 2 or 3 of them throughout the game, but there are dogs. I've mentioned it in the past, but dogs in stealth games can be horrific with their absurd detection. It wasn't too bad in this game, but they definitely can detect you better than their human counterparts. Moving on from living, breathing foes, let's talk security. We've got cameras, tripwires, mines, sentry guns, motion sensors, and maybe more. Cameras are pretty simple and will start an alarm if they spot you. Most cameras can simply be shot, but armored cameras do exist. Sentry guns are of course what you would expect and kill you very quickly. Staying out of their line of sight is very important, and I always try to deactivate them when possible at the little control panel. Tripwires were really only present in one mission that I remember, but it was actually very exciting since they were hidden in tall grass. You basically end up staring at your feet while slowly walking forward so you can disable any tripwire you come across. Motion sensors will of course detect movement, so you have to be careful when they are around. Some of them will even be moving, requiring you to stop once you're within range, then move again once they pass. Wall mines are not only a tool for you, but will also be present in some missions. You have to slowly walk up to them in order to defuse them or just stay far enough away. Lastly, and probably my favorite, the landmines. I absolutely adore these since they can only be spotted with thermal vision. This of course means you have to activate thermal to scout the ground, then turn it off so you can actually see where you're going, then rinse and repeat. There's this one particular section where you're in a closed off area with landmines all over and spotlights panning the area. You have to wait for the spotlight to pass, then avoid the landmines, which makes for this constant back and forth of your vision, and I just loved it. I actually forgot to mention one thing, and that is lightning. I love when lightning is used in stealth games as an unpredictable light source, and that is of course the case here. If lightning strikes while you are in the open, it will expose you and potentially lead to an alarm because you were spotted. Coming back to Splinter Cell Pandora tomorrow, after completing the later games, really drives home just how difficult this original trilogy can be. Enemies can detect you at the drop of a hat, so you have to move extremely slowly and precisely around each level. Getting spotted typically means you are screwed since the shooting mechanics are so ass, and the checkpoints are so far apart that dying makes you redo quite a bit. Luckily, I knew going into it how the checkpoint system works, so on these older titles, I save scum like crazy. I know some people are very against that, and I can respect that, but I'm not, so I'm gonna do it. Most of my favorite stealth games since starting the 5 T's of stealth are the more difficult ones that require a lot of repetition, but here that repetition is just too much. For example, Deadbolt makes you restart the entire level when you die. However, at most, those missions are like 10, maybe 15 minutes when you've got the perfect run. Here, it feels like I could get stuck redoing closer to 30 plus minutes since each interaction requires a much slower pace. You may have only progressed through 3 or 4 interactions, but each separate interaction is so slow that it's very time consuming. Say what you will, but again, I have no problem with save scumming, especially in these older games that can be rather janky or random. The detection in this game is absurd. From what I remember, the original Splinter Cell game was still even crazier, and Chaos Theory wasn't as bad, so it's a very clear progression. These original games can be so frustrating as you're starting, since you have to adjust to the mechanics and the slow pace required, and I most certainly felt that way early on. However, as you progress and adapt, that challenge is a delight. If you were to tell me that you quit one of the original Splinter Cell trilogy games early, I would not blame you even for a second. But I would say if you can adjust to it, then you're looking at an incredible experience. The other reason this game is so difficult at some points is the restriction on killing. There are several times throughout the game where you are forbidden from killing since you cannot afford to set up an alarm or you're just around a bunch of innocent civilians. I do want to mention the Ubisoft Connect requirement since it's very annoying. I know some people will tell you not to play the game or complain about it because of it, and in the Steam reviews that seems like a common theme, but I don't think it's that deep. Is it annoying? Absolutely. Will you have some issues when you first launch the game? Most certainly. But it will pass, and it will be worth that initial annoyance. In terms of actual technical issues, I had a couple crashes which can again be annoying, but as long as I can actually play and progress through the game, technical issues typically don't scare me off. Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow can be very unforgiving, and it falls in line with the original Splinter Cell and Chaos Theory, making for a brutally enjoyable trilogy of older games. When it comes to the actual feel, this game can be a bit rough, but once you adapt to and embrace its style, the strong mission design and level design make it a very hard game to skip.